Welcome to Xi Jinping Briefing. Central banks come close to calling time on tightening. Financial Times. Microsoft's proposed $75 billion takeover of games developer Activision Blizzard has moved a step closer after the UK's competition regulator provisionally accepted the tech giant's amendments. The Competition and Markets Authority said it was satisfied that Microsoft's proposed undertakings addressed concerns that the deal could harm competition in the UK. The regulator said its investigation of the takeover's impact on competition would continue until February 25, with a final decision due by April 24. Activision Blizzard's shareholders are due to vote on the deal on February 22. The regulator's announcement follows a preliminary decision in November stating that the takeover would be referred to a more in-depth investigation. U.S. China spy battle casts shadow over push for Biden-Xi summit. Nikkei Asia. The U.S. and China are engaged in a growing espionage contest that is complicating bilateral relations ahead of a potential summit between Presidents Joe Biden and Xi Jinping in November. The U.S. is seeking to rebuild its spy network in China, which was dismantled by China starting in 2010. The heightened intelligence struggle has become more visible in recent months, with the U.S. commenting publicly on China's counter-espionage law and China cracking down on government workers allegedly in contact with the CIA. Sparks Review, A War in Chinese History, Today. Wall Street Journal. Ian Johnson's book, Sparks, explores the work and activism of independent thinkers in China who challenge the Communist Party's versions of history and current events. Johnson argues that despite the authoritarian nature of the Chinese state and the aggressive foreign policy of Xi Jinping's government, there are sparks of light in the form of writers, journalists, artists, and filmmakers who are determined to set the record straight. These independent thinkers use digital technology to distribute their findings and evade censorship, using tools such as memory sticks to access foreign-based websites. Johnson provides examples of individuals who are researching and documenting the dark periods of Chinese history that the party has tried to bury, such as the Great Famine and the Cultural Revolution. These individuals face punishment by the government for their work, including losing their jobs, exile, or imprisonment. Despite the risks, Johnson suggests that independent thought continues to persist in China and takes encouragement from recent protests and uprisings in the country. Taiwan needs our weapons, instead, we're sending them to bad guys. Telegraph. The U.S. has announced that it will redirect $85 million in foreign military financing from Egypt to Taiwan due to Egypt's human rights abuses. The move is seen as a step in the right direction, as it prioritizes weapons transfers to freer countries facing major security threats over repressive autocrats facing few external risks. The Biden administration's policy shift is long overdue, as previous administrations have sent weapons to some of the world's most oppressive dictators instead of aiding democracies. Leaders of Syria and China announced strategic partnership as part of Asian Games diplomacy. The Toronto Star. China and Syria have formed a strategic partnership as Chinese leader Xi Jinping met with Syrian President Bashar Assad. The meeting took place in the Chinese city of Hangzhou, which is hosting the Asian Games. Xi expressed China's willingness to work with Syria to support each other and jointly safeguard international fairness and justice. Assad is seeking ways to emerge from international isolation caused by the ongoing war in Syria, and he was expected to discuss economic assistance from China for Syria's future reconstruction. China has backed Assad throughout the war, using its veto 8 times to block resolutions against his government at the UN Security Council. China to help reconstruct war-battered Syria. Al Jazeera. China has offered to help reconstruct war-torn Syria, following a meeting between Chinese leader Xi Jinping and Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The two leaders announced the formation of a strategic partnership during their meeting in Hangzhou, with Xi stating that China is willing to work with Syria to safeguard international fairness and justice. China will also support Syria's opposition to foreign interference and unilateral bullying, as well as its reconstruction efforts. Xi also said that China is willing to strengthen cooperation with Syria through the Belt and Road Initiative, to contribute to regional and world peace and development. The visit by al-Assad is an attempt to boost commercial ties with China and end more than a decade of diplomatic isolation caused by Western sanctions. Western sanctions have been in place since the civil war in Syria began in 2011. U.S. and China launch economic, financial working groups with aim of easing tensions. The Globe and Mail. The U.S. Treasury Department and China's Ministry of Finance have launched a pair of economic working groups in an effort to ease tensions and deepen ties between the two nations. The groups, led by Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and Vice Premier He Lifeng, will be divided into economic and financial segments, and aim to establish a durable channel of communication between the world's two largest economies, according to Yellen. The announcement follows a string of high-ranking administration officials' visits to China this year, and sets the stage for a possible meeting between U.S. President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping, in November. U.S. and China to launch economy and finance working groups to stabilize ties. Financial Times. The U.S. and China have established 2 working groups to address economic and financial issues, as part of efforts to stabilize their relationship. The groups will be overseen by U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and her Chinese counterpart, Vice Premier He Lifeng. The move follows Yellen's visit to Beijing in July, and the recent secret meeting between U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. The groups will enable the countries to cooperate on global issues, such as debt restructuring for low and middle-income countries, and will address regulatory and financial stability concerns. United States and China launch economic and financial working groups with aim of easing tensions. Associated Press. The U.S. Treasury Department and China's Ministry of Finance will establish a pair of economic working groups to deepen ties and ease tensions between the 2 nations. The groups will be divided into economic and financial segments, and will serve as important forums to communicate America's interests and concerns, promote a healthy economic competition between our 2 countries with a level playing field for American workers and businesses, according to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. The announcement paves the way for a potential meeting between President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping, in November. U.S. China form economy working groups in sign of better ties. Bloomberg. The U.S. and China have established 2 working groups to discuss economic and financial issues, signaling a thaw in relations between the 2 countries. The groups will provide structured channels for discussions on economic and financial policy matters, as well as an exchange of information on macroeconomic and financial developments. The meetings will be held regularly at the vice minister level, with officials reporting back to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng. This marks a resumption of regular economic dialogue between the 2 nations for the first time since 2018. The establishment of the groups comes after a series of visits to China by high-level U.S. officials, which have helped stabilize ties. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.